undecided, unfinished battle, what we, the American people, do can make a difference. What we do right now can make a difference. That's why we called these demonstrations on 4 days' notice, because even if our demonstrations are not yet in the hundreds of thousands, they only get to that point if we start somewhere. And so we have started somewhere, and the somewhere is right here. I really want people to understand the historical moment. The historical moment is undecided. And even though we are not the determining factor, we can become a major factor if we build this anti-war movement in the coming days and weeks and months. We can do this. The people of Venezuela are not our enemy. Our enemy is in the White House. Our enemy is on Wall Street. Our enemy is in the military-industrial complex. Our enemy are the terrorists who are terrorizing immigrant working-class families in the cities and towns of the United States. They're not somewhere else. They're right here at home. So let's build this movement. Let's make it strong. Let's make it an anti-war movement, an anti-racist movement, a pro-people movement, a welcoming movement to immigrants. If we know what we can do, if we rise to the occasion, we can stop this war before it starts. Thank you very much.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Money for jobs, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for schools, not for war.
Money for schools, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for housing, not for war.
Money for housing, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Money for jobs, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
And for our next speaker, we'll have Medea Benjamin from Code Pink.
So I so appreciate the speakers who have come before, because I think this has been really educational for us as well as inspirational. And when you look at who it is that is pushing war in this country, I think we have to look to Southern Florida. And we have to look to some of these right-wing Republicans, as well as some of the horrible Democrats, who have made their careers on opposing progressive governments in Latin America. And in some ways, when the U.S. was, well, the U.S. continues to be so involved in the Middle East, but at least they took their eyes off of Latin America. And Latin America was able to build governments that represented their people. Now, thanks to Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, U.S. eyes and U.S. oppression is on the people of Latin America. And so we see these right-wing people in Southern Florida who are pretending that they represent the will of the American people. And they are spewing this ridiculous kinds of ideas about the made-up Cartel de los Soles, the made-up position of Maduro, making him look like he was Saddam Hussein, the made-up threats that Venezuela poses to the U.S. in terms of the drugs, and also, I don't know if you've heard the made-up stories about uranium being sent to Iran and Hezbollah. It's all of these ridiculous things. But what is really, really amazing is despite all of this, and if you spend 5 minutes looking at Fox News, you hear it over and over again, the majority of the American people do not support an invasion of Venezuela. And that is quite astounding because it's not just progressive people, it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans. It is people who supported Donald Trump in his campaign when he said he was going to be an anti-war president. It's people who are part of the MAGA base who say, we don't want more wars. And while we may disagree with them on all kinds of things like the immigrant issue and the way they are supporting the Gestapos who are going into our neighborhoods and pulling out our neighbors from their workplaces, from their homes, from their places of worship, we do agree with them on one thing, and that is we don't want to be involved in more wars. You know, for that we can go back to the warnings of the founding fathers of this country who said America should not go overseas in search of monsters to destroy. And whether or not you think Maduro is a monster, the warning is there. It is not the role of the United States to get involved in overseas interventions. And the way this country has just in the last couple of months been going after progressive governments in Latin America and the Caribbean is horrific. Leo talked to us about the U.S. involvement in Honduras, about what the U.S. has done in Argentina with the threats of either taking away money or giving money. But I just recently came from Cuba, and what the U.S. is doing in Cuba is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. It is choking that country that has already been hurt by sanctions, but with additional sanctions now in Trump's second term, and with the threats of even tourists who want to go to Cuba, to enjoy Cuba from Europe, now can't go because their visas would be denied coming into the United States. So everything the U.S. is doing in Latin America is making the lives of people miserable. And so it is so important, as Brian said, that this is a moment. Every day I wake up, I don't know about you, I wake up and say, did Trump bomb Venezuela last night? And every day that it doesn't happen, I think we have another day to fight this administration. And as Brian said, we're going to do that in the streets, building up, but we're also going to do it in Congress. Because let me tell you, I have never felt in all the times we've been going to Congress that this is more important right now. Because I am reading the papers every single day, and what they are saying is that the opposition that is coming from Congress is putting the brakes on this administration. And the opposition coming from Congress is coming from, yes, the Democratic Party, but it's also starting to break through in the Republicans as well. We are starting to see Republicans say, I'm not so sure about the blowing up of those boats. We are starting to see Republicans say, I'm not so sure about this idea of getting involved in another war. Could this be another 20-year engagement in Latin America? And so it is really important that we continue the pressure on Congress, because there have been votes and there will be votes coming up called War Powers Act. Now, if you don't know what that is, it reaffirms what the Constitution says, which is that the executive branch of the government doesn't have the authority to wage war. It can only come from the legislative branch. And so getting Congress to reassert its authority, and not just reassert its authority to wage war, but also to say, we don't want to wage war. So now is the time to continue to pressure Congress. Now is the time to get out in the streets. Now is the time to be absolutely clear. We want those 15,000 troops that have been deployed to the region to be taken away. And certainly not to be deployed on our streets either. We want all of those aircraft carriers, those F-35s, that buildup of the biggest armadas in the world, we want them to leave the Caribbean. And while this administration is bragging about how it has revived the Monroe Doctrine, they even talk about the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. We, the people of this country and of the entire hemisphere, say we want to bury once and for all the Monroe Doctrine. The U.S. has no right to tell people in Latin America what their governments should be, who they should vote for. And if we want to see democracy in the continent, let's start right here in the United States. Troops off of our streets, ICE out of our communities, and let's bring some money back from the Pentagon to invest in people's needs and not war. Thank you. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
We're gonna try something new. I need some audience participation. So I'm gonna say something, you're gonna say shut it down. What are you gonna say?
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless war,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Let's welcome up our next speaker, Netfa from the Black Alliance for Peace.
Thank you. As said, my name is Netfa. I'm with the Black Alliance for Peace, and the Black Alliance for Peace has sent me here to deliver this message. Please bear with me. On behalf of the Black Alliance for Peace, we understand that U.S. imperialism is unable to accept the sovereignty, progress, and moral example of the Bolivarian Revolution, and it's escalating its aggressive attacks against Venezuela to destroy its example and seize its resources. This is by no means an isolated struggle. What started as aggression against Venezuela and the Bolivarian Revolution has already claimed more than 80 lives of working class people in the Caribbean and Pacific. These attacks and the wider ongoing pattern of regional militarization and imperialist control fundamentally violate the principles of the zone of peace. I'm used to doing with AFRICOMs. As U.S. Southern Command, Southcom, has systematically transformed the Caribbean into a staging ground for its hegemonic projects. Puerto Rico, a colonial territory, is consistently used as a strategic site for the deployment and launch of military exercises, normalizing its status as a forward operating base, while nations like Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago are treated as subordinate puppet states that risk their own sovereignty to facilitate U.S. objectives. Simultaneously, Haiti has been cast as a laboratory for imperial policy, where an accelerated militarization and occupation over the last 4 years has provided a blueprint for intervention. The racist and cynical designation of Haiti paramilitary armed groups as terrorists to be eradicated by U.S.-led occupation has done nothing to relieve impoverished, marginalized Haitians from the violence of these gangs, because they are a direct consequence of imperialism. And yet the excuse and Department of War's and yet the excuse and label of terrorism now has been directly exported to the case of Venezuela. There, the U.S. Department of War cynically compares Caribbean people in fishing boats to Al-Qaeda, a transparent tactic to manufacture a pretext for full military invasion and attack. But the Black Alliance for Peace is clear. It is not just Trump or the Republican Party, but the U.S. settler colonial state that is the enemy of peace and true human rights. Its actions of war and economic destruction in our region are responsible for the massive forced coercive migration of the global South, the parasitic exploitation of U.S. capitalists of the peoples and nations of our region have created the conditions that have forced millions to desperately attempt to get to the north just to live. Historically, U.S. administrations have rejected the idea that the U.S. is equal to any other state. Make America great again, and the liberal claims of U.S. exceptionalism are simply two sides of the same white supremacist coin. That is why the doctrine of full spectrum dominance is proudly embraced by the duopoly and foreign policy community, and reminds us of the guiding bipartisan strategic objective of U.S. foreign policies, no matter which party resides in the White House. To oppose this bipartisan militarization and violence, and to expel the nefarious forces of imperialist colonial violence from our region, we must be steadfast in guaranteeing our Americas as a zone of peace. This guarantee can only be built from the bottom up, through the grassroots coordination and popular struggle that highlights anti-imperialist national sovereignty. This is why the Popular Steering Committee for the Zone of Peace in our Americas network, which BAP is a part, launched the U.S. NATO out of our Americas network earlier this year. The network is the mass organization structure of the Zone of Peace campaign designed to educate the public and strengthen America's wide consciousness among the peoples of the region. The Black Alliance for Peace has joined this National Day of Action against the war in Venezuela to defend Venezuela's sovereignty and connect our struggles. The gravity of the movement demands a coordinated and powerful response that moves from mobilization to sustained organization. Our movements must pull together our forces to expose the imperial lies that cynically label popular resistance as terrorism, broadening our analysis to expose the interlocking